Hey, it's Sophia Zoe Comer with Sophie Talks. And I'm here with, in my opinion, the chance meeting, but chance meeting.
Thanks for having me, Soph. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I am super grateful that I don't know, just someone who I met and I just really connected with, and I believe in their mission and overall appreciate their following and influence, but more important, their mission. I feel very blessed and lucky that you were willing to come on the podcast, especially with it being so new. And thank you for being on. But I just wanted to get right into it with you. So everyone knows or should know that I'm a civil rights attorney, just an attorney, constitutional lawyer, pretty much just a Jill of all trades. I don't know. And I just have a lot of knowledge in particular about the law, but especially about constitutional law and civil rights law. Um, I know a lot about tort law and civil law too. Um, People don't understand that criminal law and civil law are completely different or very different. And I also know about criminal law. So when we're talking about Tyler Robinson and the fact that he's, innocent until proven guilty, it would be nice in this country if people remembered that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I uh I hear you well. I really appreciate, your kind words and you having me on, and the friendship that we've been able to build ever since first meeting you in DC when you were speaking, and what a journey it's been since then, with, everything that we've seen happen so far. Sometimes it's easy to get very dejected and overwhelmed with everything that's happening. I'm sure, you felt that the past week as a lot of us did with everything that was happening. But I'm proud of the work that all of us are doing, that you're doing. I'm proud of the work that we're doing. And what gives me hope is every time that we have conversations like this, or we're out there in the streets and we see people who are putting forth effort instead of, a lot of people that I see who are turning their heads away from this rise in fascism that we're seeing not only in this country, but the world at large. So all we can do is our best to be a part of the fight in the only way that we know how. So we're sharing information, but we're also working on a documentary. We've been doing regular videos, but working on a documentary covering dissent through our eyes, all the protests that we go to, all of these organizations, the different leaders that we meet and that we interview, the different speakers, the different protesters, all we're trying to paint that picture of people who are putting forth considerable effort against the fascist Trump regime and hopefully implore more people to join that effort because it's absolutely necessary with the times that we find ourselves in right now. Um, but yeah, that's what we're here to do.
yeah, and I would say, I think we're historians, and we're historians and documentarians, all of us, as we're literally having to fill the role of the, in my opinion, media, because the mass media is defunct and just overall, kind of buying into propaganda, but more like
Yeah,
honestly,
they're the peddlers of it.
yeah, I mean, honestly, propaganda, disinformation, but more importantly, just the state's version of what they want you to know. Because there's a lot more information. And it's not even just like that, it's also disinformation. I mean, I really would like to, first and foremost, I've talked a fair amount about Charlie Kirk and overall that I feel that his death is an absolute tragedy and I deplore political violence. And I
Mhm.
don't think we should sanitize his legacy. And I've already talked about him enough. But I'd like to talk about the investigation in relation to his assassination and what it reveals about us as a society in the way that you make people like me, who's just a nice, in my opinion, nice trans woman trying to live her life. Um, you don't meet many trans people, but we exist and we have exist for millennia. Look it up. There was an emperor of Rome who was trans, and there was actually a trans certificate. So, like, being trans is a real thing, and when you deny it, it's very cruel. And when you say things like tranny, that's really, really cruel and really awful. And I'm only quoting people like Nancy Mace, who literally said that. And guess what, Nancy? You weren't on the. No, I want to say this part really seriously. You weren't on the House floor. And you don't have immunity for what you said. And I and every other trans person who hears this and wants to join my class action should reach out to me because you, one, just were speaking complete and total lies. And two, truly, you're saying awful and horrendous things, right in front of a microphone and lying. There's absolutely no connection whatsoever to a trans person in this case. And guess what? As a trans person, I know how to tell the journalists and I know how to tell the media exactly how to prove that that person that you were trying to say was trans, who, by the way, I saw in now all the charges that you guys dropped that complete and total bullshit lie. Because when you're trans,
Media is still sticking
you
with
are
it though.
trans. Are they really? I haven't seen it. And
Uh-huh.
honestly, well, I mean, that's ridiculous because it's not in the pleadings whatsoever. This is probably a male lover, maybe someone who remotely had a furry thing. Probably not. What you guys don't understand
Uh-huh.
is like the far right can have male, people who are like gay just as easily as left and other things. So, this person could still be a groper, which, is something I never heard of at all. They're certainly into a game called Helldivers. Look into it. But what you're not going to find, and if you do, whatever. I think you'd be saying it all over the media, everywhere, if you had
Uh-huh.
anything like it. But what you would look for, journalists who are going to listen to me, you would look for records from psychiatrists and psychologists for this roommate. I'm not going to say their name because I don't think it's appropriate, but I do know it and I've seen it reported. I You would also have records from like a facility where this person would be medically transitioning. Because here's the thing about being trans, especially to the point where you want to say that this person had the motive to do such an awful, awful thing to Charlie Kirk. And this person isn't even remotely trans, and you people are fucking sick for trying to act like being trans is some contagion of the left or in general. I am not an abomination of God. I will debate each and every one of you on the Bible, and not just the Bible, but the message of the Bible, but more importantly, the civil rights and the law. So you are deplorable from the way that you treat trans people who are a part of the human condition, the human natural condition within the world. And so Nancy Mace and other politicians who would use this terrible event to try to connect and hurt the trans community, that is a very awful thing to do.
That's well said.
Thanks, Chance.
And
I'm
I
sorry for
think
giving
it's
thank you for giving me this soapbox
no,
bear.
it's necessary to be said. And I think, when you talk about them finding this roommate and just so happened to find a trans roommate, which, we have absolutely no evidence for, but it's the same thing that happened with this entire case. It's what they always do. It's the same thing that they did before they knew who the suspect was and immediately said that it was a leftist to go after a leftist. It's the same thing that they did when they said that there was trans ideology. What does that even mean? What is an
Oh,
ideology?
my
But
under
yeah,
my understanding was that this notices and bulges, which is like a weird meme type of thing, like notices, bulges,
right. That's
woo. I'm
it's
not a
some
person who
meme, but
really
they were
understood any of it, but I mean, they wanted to tie it, they wanted to tie it to trans people and to the leftists. I mean, but I'm not going to say something cold or something awful, but it was like before any of us had even had an opportunity to even process what we had seen. The president of the United States was giving what appeared to be, I had a very
it's
stitched
violence.
together. No, it was a very stitched together piece of film. People were saying it was AI. I don't believe it was AI, but there was no yeah, you're right. There was like an imagery to it, but there was no one there. Um, I think this actually gets deeper to the idea that our president is mentally cognitively deficient. I believe he had a stroke, and I think if you know, look at his face when it sometimes is crooked, um, you
Mm-hmm.
know, just so you understand, President of the United States, Donald
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump. Um, Truth is an absolute defense to defamation. So if you sue me for saying you had a stroke, I will get discovery on you, and I will be able to prove that you had a stroke. Just so you understand.
It looked like it looked like I don't know about, you know, the video being AI. It looked
No, it
like there could
wasn't. It
have
was
been some
stitched
type of
together.
AI filter over it or something like that. But I'm worried about the rhetoric because as soon as Charlie Kirk was murdered and seeing the video and everything, I felt the existential horror of knowing what would come after that. But I didn't realize how many people would just take that bait, hook, line, and sinker, that they would use this to manufacture consent, going after more groups of people and escalating their authoritarianism and their overreach and their abuses of power, and that they would use this to foment chaos and more violence and everything, which is something that Charlie Kirk as a person was also very good at. His stochastic terrorism, you know, his ability to package white supremacist neo-Nazi talking points, things like great replacement theory or the demonization of, you know, any types of groups of trans people, of anybody in the LGBTQ community, of black people, of immigrants. Like he covered that with the shield of Christianity and patriotism and pretending as if he was being in taking part in good faith debates when all of his debates were in bad faith, and harbored so much hateful bigotry that riled up a certain base that manufactured consent for real world harm. He is one of the main reasons why Donald Trump got elected with the youth vote. He was one of the main proponents in manufacturing consent for demonizing and generalizing immigrants and this violent ethnic cleansing that we're seeing in this country. And then when he died, and seeing the horror of that moment, and then seeing the horror of the aftermath, like it's just been the past 5 days has just been a whirlwind of chaos in my own hometown, going back to my own hometown and seeing three separate billboards of Charlie Kirk, who is an unapologetic white supremacist and has said so many harmful things to marginalized communities, and yet all of these people are celebrating him. And I'm going around, and all of these flags are at half mast for 4 or 5 days straight, not just at the um, buildings where there's businesses, but at people's houses. All these flags are at half mast and everything. And then I'm seeing on Facebook people that I went to school with, who I know a lot of them are against what's happening in this country right now, but then they're like, well, he was one of the good guys. He shaped a lot of my political views. And I'm like, well, if he shaped a lot of your political views, then you're doing something wrong, because this person was a bigot that advocated for taking rights away from different groups of people. And when you advocate for taking rights away from different groups of people while using hate speech to advocate for that, that is hateful and that is violent. And everybody who is celebrating that person, I'm not celebrating his death. I condemn any type of violence like that, not just political violence, but violence as a whole. But the people who are celebrating him as a person, the hypocrisy is absolutely insane, because the same people who I saw refuse to say anything about Melissa Hortman and her husband when they were assassinated along with their dog right in front of their daughter, or say anything about the children in Gaza that have been dying in a Holocaust, the innocent men, women, and children there that have been dying in a genocide. or the violent ethnic cleansing that is happening right here that Charlie Kirk had a hand in bringing about. Um, so I was very disappointed and I was very angry, and I still am, at seeing this overwhelming support for somebody who was a very damaging and dangerous person. And then afterwards, seeing all these neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups coming out, holding up his picture, shouting, "White man, fight back." And this administration still using that imagery of him as their golden boy, as somebody who should be held up, that they're putting his pictures next to Jesus or next to MLK and JFK, as if he was some bastion, some champion of free speech and civil rights, when he was the exact opposite. He may have put that on as a front, saying, "Hey, I believe in free speech and I believe in civil rights," when he was advocating for the opposite at all times, when he was advocating for taking rights away from marginalized groups. And I think it's absolutely disgusting, especially in the wake of the black student from Delta State University in Mississippi, Trey Reed, who was lynched. And the police are calling it a suicide, which there is a deep history, especially within the state of Mississippi, but within, America and the American South, of black people being killed and lynched, and then it being ruled as a suicide with no investigation, while his family members are saying that he had marks on his body and he had broken limbs, and yet they're saying it was a suicide, and he was found hung in the middle of campus at Delta State University, and the media isn't touching it at all. And nobody is talking about it. The same people who were posting pictures honoring a white supremacist refuse to talk about it. And I've had it. I've had it with the selective outrage, which is not even a like it's selective outrage for somebody who is an abhorrent individual, but for innocent people who are being attacked by that same mentality and that same ideology. All of these people, people that I know, people that I thought would know better, are not saying a word. And it's absolutely extremely disappointing, disheartening, and depressing. And I really thought that, things like white supremacism, like Nazism, that we all collectively agreed that those things were bad. And somewhere along the way, this administration and the billionaires and the talking heads that surround him normalized this type of thinking, this type of white supremacist neo-Nazism thinking, that is causing a lot of the problems that we're seeing happening today. And they normalized it so well that so many people are falling for it, as if it has any veritability. It's yeah. So that's my 2 cents on that whole situation. It's been a rough past few days, just having the curtain drawn. Um, it's yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
It's all right, and I wanted to give you that opportunity. That's the
Thank
opportunity
you.
you get
I
with
appreciate
Sophie
it.
Talks. Like, I try to not talk as
Thank you.
much, but honestly, it really just goes back and forth of us giving our soapbox speech, and I think that's what people want to hear. But we're talking and we're listening to each other, but we're really talking to America, and we want to hear what you have to say in like the comments and other things. And so, I will tell you that my take as a trans woman and avid civil rights person my entire life, well prior to coming out as trans. Always been a person who supported the LGBTQ community, have other relatives who are that. Um, at, I just believe that Charlie Kirk was hate with a smile. And I, I, I second the idea that that's dangerous. And that's dangerous because it normalizes the idea of the ideology that you can also see David Duke have, just being now risen up. And so, let's not let someone's horrific death lead to the canonization or the sanitization of their life. So, what I would say is that I have no reason to dispute Charlie that he was a free speech enthusiast and or advocate. I think he used it to his advantage. I think Charlie
Hmm.
would honestly think that if he wasn't just a really huge hypocrite, and I have no reason to believe that he was, I actually think he was really quite honest with the, in my opinion, fairly divisive views that he held. I really feel like he would have been disgusted by the chilling of speech that we're seeing with these mass firings for people who are, and both of us have sat here and said that we condemn all violence. We at no point like I at no point in at all am happy, celebrated, or in any sort of way felt that way about Charlie Kirk's death, shooting, assassination, whatever you want to call it. It just wasn't my feeling. I know a lot of other people who, in the moment, felt all sorts of things. Like people on the
Hmm.
right felt an uncontrollable rage towards people on the left without even knowing who did this, and we still have no idea the ideology. People on the right felt, and we're talking about people who are minorities, right? We're talking about black people. We're talking about LGBTQ people. We're talking about women. And we're talking about a person who was known to advocate against every single one of their rights.
I think a lot of people, because I saw it happening, a lot of people refuse to see him for who he was in the wake of such a horrible,
And I'm,
horrible
e-
death.
and I'm even see it being
Um,
sanitized by JD Vance and other people. We will not
right,
let his quotes go unheard because that's what the following heard. Those were the dog whistles.
exactly. And
Charlie seemed like a very nice individual who you would have wanted to share a beer with or maybe sit down with because he seemed like a nice and good person. And I don't want to say that he like possibly wasn't. No, I'm just saying he had that appearance. He could even people who
right,
would debate him would say that he would approach you. And what I'm trying to get at, Chance, is that that's the
hmm,
danger and that's the problem.
right.
While Trump is a much more divisive, honestly hateful, grumpy old man, grandpa, racist grandpa, Charlie was your, oh no, like
I think when he was,
misunderstood cousin who you shouldn't
I
have heard
think when
out.
he was in person
Yeah,
during his debates at colleges and
that's what I'm
everything
talking
like
about.
that, I think that was the front that he put on, and with his clips and everything. I think that if you were a bit more educated, you could see right through it,
Of
it with the
course.
dog whistles, with everything, with those debates. But I have followed Charlie Kirk's career for years, and I've seen him outside of the, campus debates where he's, debating actual people who have, weight to put, behind
Yeah.
them when debating. And then also have watched his podcast, and in that podcast space, I think is where he said a lot of the most unhinged and abhorrent stuff.
Which is what
That
people loved
was
about him.
kind of right,
Like
which
the
was kind
people
of a
who,
little bit more sanitized when going to college campuses, even though he said horrible things there as well. But at the same time, when he was on his podcast, and I was giving evidence to a lot of people who were saying he never said these things, that quote is a lie. And then I would get a video and I would be like, no, this quote is true. Like anytime that he would, demonize black people by giving false statistics to talk about how black people were more violent than white people, or when any time that he would tout things surrounding great replacement theory ideology, or any time that he would go after the Civil Rights Act and say the Civil Rights Act was a mistake, or any time that he would go after MLK and say that MLK was a bad person, or MLK was the reason we have racism. Um, and those things people still denied when seeing them, and they're like, you're taking that out of context. And then I would clip an even larger video, and I was like, with more context, it's like paints an even worse picture. Like it paints an even bigger picture of an ideology. And I was like, and this isn't one thing that happens. This is something that he has repeated many times. The things about MLK, the things about the Civil Rights Act, the demonization of black people with false information. It was a tactic that was repeated over and over again in different spaces. So I'm clipping videos where he's saying the same thing on college campuses as he's saying the same thing on these podcasts, and people are still like, well, that's still taken out of context. That's not what he really meant. Well, I disagree with that part, but he was still overall a good person. I'm like, you don't want to see what's right in front of your eyes. You're refusing to understand, ignoring the evidence of your eyes and ears so that you can remain comfortable and not have to reconcile with the fact that you may have been listening and agreeing with white supremacy and neo-Nazi ideology for a very long time. Um, so that was another thing, is just the having debates with people and presenting them so much evidence and them outright refuting the things that they see with their own eyes and doing so much mental gymnastics to make something that is blatantly there seem in their minds like it means something completely different than what he said and what he repeatedly said all the time and what he built his entire base around. That's ideology has rippled into so many ramifications, including policy that was put forth by this administration. Um, so yeah, yeah,
Party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. George Orwell, 1984.
we live in Orwellian times right now. Um, especially with
Screens.
these surveillance systems, yeah, these screens and these surveillance systems, and now the overreach and the attacks on all of our rights through these surveillance systems.
And through
Um,
through our own posts and through our own, belief that we had, the illusion that we all had free speech. With a lot of us, we know that
right.
we didn't. I want to get into that in a second, but I do want to just take
Hmm.
one last second to say, like, I'm not a person who believes that, like, there is nothing, like, if there's a MAGA person or there's a Republican, like, we can't be in the same, like, frisbee field or public area, like, that. And so I believe that, like, if there was that type of environment, I just, he came off like a much, much more sanitized, normal, nice version of people who I've always considered to be quite awful. And so
Hmm.
where I really wanted to go with that is, like, I think that people, and I constantly am struggling with this, and I really want to, like, really, really unpack it here. But, like, I used to always feel like the Ku Klux Klan, just a history reference here, people. We're going to dive back into, you know, um, very dark times, when we were talking about the passage of the Civil Rights Act, which, Charlie Kirk, has criticized. I always thought that the Ku Klux Klan wore their hoods to protect themselves and their identity. And I thought for a long time in all of this, in relation to ICE and these officers now wearing hoods, that they were doing it for their protection. And they're not. It's part of the terror. So, what my dad and, like, other people I've spoken to just in this era of, like, the 1940s, 50s, 60s, um, everyone kind of like the Ku Klux Klan is like the enforcers of the white sundown town, but everybody kind of
Hmm.
is bought in on that same mentality,
Right.
um, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And so when I say something like, the hoods are off. Thanks, guys. We
No.
know who you are and we
Yeah.
know where you stand. We know that you don't like us. We know that you hate us. But I do find it particularly deplorable, um, that in particular the US government is stepping in and saying that black people and LGBTQ people, people of minority status, their reaction to someone who hated them, spoke that they didn't deserve the same rights, and that they should be eradicated, and that they were an abomination to God. When they had a human moment of reaction to that, you want to cancel them? Which is by far the most, like, hypocritical thing on the idea of we're honoring
Right.
the bastion of free speech, Charlie Kirk, by canceling everyone? Like, get the
It's
fuck
it's
out of here.
it's
This is
revenge.
outrageous. This is
It
outrageous because most of the time I'm seeing black students in southern universities. I stopped myself, by the way. Sorry. I'm not going to use the term. I'm not going to use the term racist anymore. I'm just going to say you must have been a Charlie Kirk supporter.
mm, that's
Guess
good.
what? And guess what? Instagram, you're not going to know. And if you will figure it out, you're not going to be able to censor it. Because you always tell me when I say, hey, that's racist or anything else. Now I'm just going to say, and I've done this a few times to other people, and it's great. I say, you must have been a Charlie Kirk supporter. And they know just what I mean.
Hmm.
And it cuts deep, especially if they think that they wouldn't have been. And if they are, then wear it. Own it. Wear your hate on your sleeve and your badge. Because I thought that MAGA and those hats, those people were just like, I don't know, Republicans or whatever. But you can't hide Republicanism behind with Charlie Kirk. You can't say that this MAGA movement that is 50% of the country is also this far right ideology that does not agree with the civil rights movement, which is the landmark piece of civil legislation in the history of the United States, and by
Hmm.
far the most important piece of legislation other than the Constitution itself. And so you guys, you need to own who you are right now. And you need to look in the mirror. Because to be honest, I have spent a whole week mourning the loss of the innocence of our country and my view of it.
I think that's when you say, the hoods are off and everything like that. That is exactly how I felt. If not seeing all these people honoring Charlie Kirk and everything, and then having the inability to understand his impact and his danger, and all of the harm, the real world tangible harm that his stochastic terrorism caused. That inability to understand that, and that support was like that, okay, the hoods are off moment for me, but not for people who I think would actively advocate for harm to come to me, but the people who would turn the other way and allow it to happen.
I think that that's what I mean as well. I agree.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you that I think that the Klan are the J6ers. That's their
Hmm.
enforcement. That's who their people are. That's who went and incited an insurrection. That's what we all
Right.
saw. Um,
Hmm.
and that's who I really
Proud
mean.
Boys,
But like
Oath
what I want
Keepers.
you
Yeah.
people to understand is that everyone that allows those people to exist are part of the problem. And you're not the Klan, but you are certainly I want to get this word exactly right. You are either an apologizer or you are an enabler of that system. And I find that really sad. And so, yeah, while, I mean, I truly do not believe that Charlie Kirk like espoused true violence to African American people other than sanctioned police violence, which is awful on its own. Like, he was getting up there and telling you the same talking points as David Duke. And if you don't believe me, go check it out. Like, I'm not a liar. I'm sitting on facts. And honestly, I'm not sitting here and telling you anything you probably don't already know, even if you do like Charlie. Like, he believed these things. Like, he called abortion worse than the Holocaust. He said that. You probably believe it. We don't. He said that trans people were an abomination to God. Not only was that incredibly cruel and misguided. But I want to take a moment here and just digress. If you guys who are Christian truly look at Charlie Kirk as some bastion of faith and Christianity, I would just tell you to go back and read the book. Because I think that if the goal, and I believe it is, of reading that book is to receive a message so that you can live your life in a way to receive the kingdom of God, that I think that all of you are failing the book report if you agreed at all with Charlie Kirk's views on empathy, because you are wrong. Jesus Christ had literally one true message, and it was love thy neighbor, and not your Christian
I think
love
right.
of, father and mother knows best. True love.
You can't call somebody uh, a devout Christian who believed in Jesus's teaching, who literally advocated many times for bringing back public executions and then saying that children should be there to watch as a rite of passage. Atop all of that, hateful ideology that he spread for so long, put up with that at the same time. It really paints a picture of the ideology and the person who that was and the impressionable young minds that he infected with that ideology and riled up to think and act on those same things. Um, and then I wanted to talk about, yeah, the cancel culture and the firings that are happening and everything that are real hypocritical for, um,
And not
you
just
know,
hypocritical, but also a true red alarm in America of the
right,
chilling of free speech.
right, and
Because this
and
is really
they
big,
would,
one speech over another. I mean, we are
right,
talking about minorities who like, say what you will about what they did or whatever. They are having a moment of the most high profile person who maybe ever hated them or spoke hate against them or spoke real true disenfranchisement of them, having this awful thing happen in real time. And then you're sitting there as usually a white person or a person of European descent or a person of, heterosexuality when this is, and you're judging them for that moment in that like raw moment. I just think, like, who am I to judge and who are you to judge?
it's
I'm not excusing
revenge.
that, but it's not a reason to lose your livelihood. And just so we're all clear, it
It's
is illegal to dox people. If someone sent you a private message that you found very awful in relation to Charlie Kirk and their overall celebration, that is illegal to share. There are laws. You are invading the privacy that you and that person had when the conversation was made. You are not allowed to share that, and you certainly are not allowed to share it with their employer. And when you do, and when people call your employer, I want you to know this. If you, listening right now, were doxxed by any of these websites, I would say Charlie's Murderers, the one that was shut down because the website, I don't want to get the website's name incorrect. We'll put it right down here. Because here's the thing. They, at some point after hearing about it, but allowing it to continue for as long as it did, have some sort of responsibility. And every single thing about that was super, super illegal. And those
hmm
people are responsible. And guess what? You have a record. We're going to find you. We're going to figure out your nonprofit if you have one. If you're not, we're going to sue you individually. You have tortious interference with hundreds of thousands of people, and you have doxed thousands of people illegally. And so if you were hurt by these people, contact me. I am starting a class action lawsuit against these people. Um, and ultimately, as an attorney, I am just willing to help us all through the process, because there are a lot of attorneys that are going to argue to you that you do not have freedom of speech against a private employer. And I am speaking directly to the person who was fired, who was like a teacher, worked for an airline, Anybody who could possibly have what we call governmental action basically made an announcement to airlines that they need to fire people who had horrendous responses to Charlie Kirk's assassination. This is freedom of speech issue. We do not have hate speech in this country, Pam Bondi. I don't know if you um just weren't paying attention in constitutional law and civil and criminal law, or if you just didn't want to know the truth and the facts. But Supreme Court has specifically 100% always stated that there is no such thing as hate speech in the United States of America. There's nothing that's like not allowed to be said because it's hate speech. We allow people, once they have permits, even if they're white supremacists, even if they're Nazis, they're allowed to march. There was a constitutional case that went to the Supreme Court on that very issue. And you know why I always stood by that, even though I find Nazis deplorable? Because I never thought that the state should be stepping into the idea and the role of policing what and was not hate, a hate group, or acceptable speech. And that's
Hmm.
because I'm a true advocate for free thought. And I see that when you have a government, it could be controlled by one party, the idea of hate speech could be weaponized.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think what we're seeing is, this party, the MAGA party, was so mad about cancel culture and some level of persecution that they claim to have felt. And what's happening now is revenge for that. It's revenge for bigots held accountable for harassment. Like, that's what it is. It's all of these people who thought they could harass people with their bigotry, with their racism and everything, and were held accountable for that, who are now like, oh, we have the opportunity to hold people accountable for holding us accountable. You know what I'm saying? It's trying to turn it around, but overstepping in a way where it's like, I claim to be a bastion of free speech, and that's why I want to be able to say whatever hateful thing in the world that I want to say.
I mean, I guess
And now
like
I'm
there's nothing comparable except for all the awful shit that was said about George Floyd on the right, and no one lost their job over that
right.
whatsoever because of a dominant
Not at
culture
the behest
activist,
of the
government,
federal
or anyone
government.
else. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, like
not
at
at the
the end of the
behest of the
day,
federal government.
yeah, at the end of the
Um,
day, there's a true
so it's
disconnect in people's ideas to the idea that like white people are the majority, but that means we also have a responsibility to not be like oppressive and create laws that are either disenfranchising of other people. And I'm also a minority, but we're both European descents, Um we talk about, racial equality and other things from a position of privilege is what I'll go with. And we acknowledge and we see that. We also, as a minority myself, as a queer woman, I don't, I see the discrimination as well, and I see the discrimination
hmm
of women. But what I really like truly believe is the idea of policing the free speech of minorities in relation to the awful death of like truly like a person who is on the far right speaking against those minorities' very rights to exist.
hmm
You are policing the reaction of the
yeah,
of the of the
yeah.
first victim. I mean,
hmm
like
And it's crazy because that's something that I pointed out to people too. People from the hometown in which I grew up in, because growing up, I'm half black, and being in a very red southern town, and a lot of my family being black, my brother, my sister, my cousin, my mom, um, there is a lot of racism that we faced a lot of times. And not only that, but just the air of the culture around here, where you see people freely flying Confederate flags on the back of their trucks and in their windows and stuff like that. And literally one of the shops, beat shops that are over here, had a Confederate flag outside, and that's hateful to me. Like I consider that in the same camp as the Nazi flag. That is a flag that represents hate and oppression and violence towards a marginalized group of people. And that's still something that in America people don't understand, don't realize, and people still champion that. And it's just it's horrifying to see that. Um,
You don't think they realize
So
it?
I think that that there are people that do realize it, and it's their intention to fly it because they realize it. But I do think that there are a lot of people who are very ignorant or make so many excuses within their delusion, being like, "I'm not a hateful person. I don't hate this person over here," but do not care enough or are so ignorant that they don't understand the history behind it or what it represents. And I'm not saying that to give anybody the benefit of the doubt or anything like that either. That's no excuse anyway to be flying a flag like that. But so many people are so very um, deep-seated in their delusion that they cannot perceive any type of harm that they cause with their actions or their speech outside of their immediate purview. Um,
I think that makes a lot of sense. What I would say is, and I think this is really good if we want to go to a whole different topic that I've been wanting to talk about a lot, but it's also a good closing point regardless. I think that what you're describing and what I would like to talk about is like essentially not like a shared, but just a cognitive dissonance. There's this idea of like what is reality and what I want reality to be or what I wish it would be. And those just aren't the same right now whatsoever. And so while you, white person who sees Charlie Kirk and either maybe didn't even know who he was or truly and are falling truly into the idea of like, oh, the left took out one of the mega loyalists, and I think that's really sad, and political violence is atrocious. And guess what? It is. It is absolutely politically like political violence and violence in general, in my opinion, is atrocious and has no place in civil society whatsoever. But let's be let's be honest. Let's just be honest with each other as a country about where we are as a country and what's going on. So one,
mhm,
if you want to go to these vigils and you want to say that you're there to honor victims of political violence, okay. Where were you in relation to doing that for the Hortmans or anyone else? I mean, maybe there just wasn't vigils. But like, make that known. Make it known how you're experiencing this, because to the people on the outside, it looks like a lot of white people and no minorities whatsoever, all sitting around honoring a person that all of us on the side that you were, I guess you're just outside. Your outside group that you guys all created. We know who he was, and you're
mhm.
honoring him. And
I
it's
think
just, it's really frustrating to see people, even on the left, even Democrats. And I do realize it is a really tricky situation, but I have taken an immense amount of time to detail the nuanced differences between like the New York Yankees honoring Charlie Kirk and his legacy and his mission, and the Green Bay Packers just saying, here's a moment that you can have for silent reflection for the murder of Charlie Kirk. We think that all violence is bad. It's going to take all of us to stop violence. I was okay
But
with
my
it.
my thought is, why are we not doing that for, like, why wouldn't we do that for other people? Why wouldn't we do that for the Portmans? Because that didn't happen at any sporting event. Why didn't we do that
Well, I mean,
like for the
you and I
children
both
of
know the answer is that that
for
starts
the
at the top.
children of Gaza every single day?
Well, you're
Why
not
are we not
responding.
honoring them at every single one of these moments of bread and circuses where everybody's ignoring the genocide that we're all complicit in? Why are we not honoring them? I have a problem with every single one of these places doing any type of honoring for Charlie Kirk. I don't care about the fact that he was a victim of this political violence. When you're over there and I care about the fact that this political violence happened, but I don't care about your honoring of him in any of these situations.
Well, it felt like the Green Bay
You
Packers
shouldn't
were
be
saying, we're asking you to take a moment, if you want to, for silent reflection for the murder of a very high profile person. I was okay with that. I
right,
really was.
but and
And they at no
that's
point
where
did
I
they honor him.
disagree.
Well,
That's where I because it's
being
like
okay with it is
there is no
okay.
place.
I preferred them not honoring him whatsoever, but the
Right.
NFL and Green Bay,
Hmm.
and that area being the first and the first to set a tone, and it was 2 days after. I am a huge Packers fan and a fan, but like they set a tone for how to do it right. And like the New York Jets had like a huge memorial, as like a video of his life. That was how to do it wrong. And honestly, and I'll get into it, Josh Shapiro, my governor, you have waffled back and forth, but I checked your actual proclamation and you said that you wanted people to honor the memory of Charlie Kirk. And honestly, Josh Shapiro, I asked you to come on my podcast and explain that to all my LGBTQ people who follow you deeply and really believe that you are going to be the answer. And we still support you, but like you owe us an apology. You owe us an explanation. It's sickening. You told people to lower the flags, not for political violence, which you said later on in your like quotes, but I read your proclamation. And it was saying to honor Charlie Kirk. And then you asked all Pennsylvanians to join you. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you for that. I think it was a real dog whistle. I know you're a fairly moderate governor. I also saw your speech with that at the Summit to Eradicate Hate today, which I thought was just phenomenal. I thought it was a great speech. It did the exact opposite of what your proclamation did. It talked about Charlie in a long line of political violence, which I did not appreciate you including the assassination of honestly, just the killing of a businessman, the union, the person who owns United Health, or the CEO. You guys calling that a political assassination is the admitting that you in democracy are in bed with the oligarchs. So
Right.
are you one? I don't want to call you like that is the worst admission that I have ever seen by both the right and the left of how you feel about us in the middle. Like us
I think
people, us lowly people, Josh Shapiro. You consider the person who, how is it a political violence to kill a CEO? That's insane. That is insane. And by the way, to just today, we are breaking news here. The judge dropped those charges of terrorism and of, really trumped up charges that you sat there and tried to connect. So please do not include that. That is rhetoric that is disgusting and deplorable. The rest of your speech was very good.
I just wanted to yeah, just have my stance here is that I think that any type of honoring of Charlie Kirk, any sporting event or anything like that, giving a moment of silence or anything is deplorable and asinine. That's why I was saying I don't care because I don't care about honoring him and especially honoring him in such a public way to make a statement and for the government to manufacture consent for going after more groups because they're already doing it. So it's absolutely asinine and deplorable to ask or give any type of open space for anybody to honor a white supremacist and neo-Nazi who touted so much horrible ideology that harmed a lot of people. And that's where I'll leave that.
And we will also both say that we condemn political violence
Of
unequivocally.
course, because political violence and violence of any kind, all it
Begets more
does is
violence.
exacerbate things and beget more violence. And that was the horror that I felt as soon as I saw that video and knew the
Ramifications.
and it's the ramifications. And honestly, like I knew it would be bad. I thought that some parts would be worse, and I thought that some parts would be a lot less bad than it actually ended up being, and that was just how quick and how large they turned him into a martyr and a hero. But I knew that martyrdom was coming as soon as it happened, and they did it so quickly, as if they had already had all their ducks in a row to do so. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying seeing so much support for somebody like that and seeing that that ideology has been taken on by so many people who I otherwise thought were reasonable people, but I guess that's just a testament to how the people in power have normalized white supremacy and Nazism in this country. Um, and all of the rhetoric and ideology that falls in line with that. And we're seeing it in all of the policies that this government is doing, in all of the overreach, in the complete ignoring of the Constitution, in the dismantling of democracy, the deregulation and privatization of all of our systems, the demonization of minority groups, going after political dissidents, the revocation of rights, the revocation of residency and visas for hundreds of thousands of immigrants, the violent ethnic cleansing that is happening right now, and the genocide that we are all complicit in, that our government is funding and facilitating right now. Um, so yeah, and it's not just happening here. It's happening everywhere. It's a rise of fascism that is taking hold throughout this country, and a lot of people refuse to look at it for what it is and see the parallels from the last time that there was this global rise in fascism. Um, and for the people that are burying their heads in the sand and refuse to look at it, you need to really start listening to the people who are telling you these things before it's too late, because they are the rhetoric that the government is using, that the president and all of the people surrounding him, like, look at what is happening. Look at the policies that they're putting forth. Look at the things that they are doing. Look at the horror and the trauma and the violence and the death that they are causing en masse in front of all of our faces. And then so many people are being like, oh no, it's too overwhelming. I'm going to look the other way. That only allows them to do it and do it more and do it better. We need a unified front. It's not right versus left, no matter how much they're trying to make it. We need a unified front against these fascists that do not care about any of us. They just use white supremacy as a means of divisiveness and to go against the marginalized groups that they dislike.
Yeah, if you keep us fighting against each other, we don't fight against the people who are truly controlling and pulling the strings. I would strongly agree with that. Um, I think that truly I believe, Charlie was hate with a smile and he normalized this idea to the point where now they're all like, well, I'm not a hateful white supremacist. I just have respect for my heritage. It's all branding. I have respect for my. No, that's just what has happened. This is how people have
It's
fallen
just,
in.
it's insane. Yeah, it's
How
just,
correct I
I
am?
know.
Because now
No, I mean,
it's
yeah,
not,
it's just
it's not that I'm a white supremacist. It's that I have respect for my European heritage and for the Western heritage of Europe. That's it. I mean, that's how they're repackaging this. And
yeah.
just really understand how disingenuous that is, because there
Hmm.
is a world of information on non-westernized civilization and the vast amount that it has contributed to our overall human history and human knowledge. I like to point out in particular that I believe, I think algebra and calculus are both part of the
Curriculum. Mm,
it's very egocentric and it's very misguided to think because of the randomness of your birth that you're better than someone.
right.
I thought
A
we were
lot of a
past
lot
that
of
time. I really
I
did.
thought we were past that too. I thought we were past that
And
too.
I
So
and I and
I
I can't tell you how goddamn frustrating it is to sit here and try to talk to you people and tell you and have to defend the idea that slavery was deplorable.
mhm,
Why do I have to convince you of that in 2025? Why
mhm.
is someone on the other side convincing you that like there were
That it wasn't that bad. It was just a product of his time, and it's better than dying, isn't it?
like those were
Um,
the only two options that these people had?
yeah.
And even
That
like,
that's
we still
that's
have
what
to
I was
just look
seeing a
back
lot.
and say it is wrong and it is bad or it
Right.
can happen again.
Exactly.
And don't think that it can't.
Mhm.
They are, and I'm not talking about in the classic, slavery that we had, but the human trafficking that we're starting to see within our
Yeah.
society. The idea that you listen to Putin and Xi talking about human organs.
Yeah.
I mean,
Slavery
like
never
the
ended. It
idea is
just
just
changed forms, you
yes
know?
to
And that
Jim
was a big
Crow
thing that I
and
saw. Um, People talk about when they were defending and honoring Charlie Kirk and everything. And I was like, this guy's a white supremacist and a neo-Nazi. And they were like, you can't say those things about him just because you disagree with his opinion. And I said, human
you
rights
should say you're right.
is
I
not a
don't.
difference in opinion.
No, you should say I don't call him those things because we have a difference in opinion. I call him those things because he aligns with those people aligned with.
Exactly. He
That's the
aligns with,
goddamn
there's a
argument.
reason why he's right over there. But I said the same thing. It's
That's the
because he's
argument, though.
aligning himself with Nazism, with all of that rhetoric and ideology. And there's a reason why those people are on his side, listening to him and advocating for him all the time. And these people are saying, well, it's just a difference of opinion. You can't hate him for that or anything. It's not a difference of opinion. Human rights are not a difference of opinion. You can't advocate for rights being taken away from somebody just based on who they are, what the group they belong to, and call it a difference of opinion. That is violence. That is hate. That is not a difference of opinion.
And it
That
is
should be the
and it is
baseline understanding of all of humanity, is that all of humanity, no matter what group you belong to, should be awarded the exact same equal human rights. And if you advocate against that, then you're a terrible person who is aligning themselves with Nazi ideology.
well, such is life. Me and Chance, our Chance meeting got cut off by technical difficulties. So it was an absolute honor to have Chance join me, and he gave me permission to just kind of do this sign out on my own. And ultimately, what I wanted to say was like, I don't agree with every single thing Chance said, but I want to have those conversations. We agree on a lot. But ultimately, I want to create a place for other creators to come and be able to speak their mind freely, especially in this type of community and society. And so, if you're a creator or if you're just an activist, anybody who really has a story that you really want to share and get out and just have heard by people or the world, I put it as to as many people as I possibly can. You know, follow me. Listen to this podcast, reach out, and let's share the stories of the descent. Thanks a lot, Chance, for giving me this chance meeting.